Welcome to Intro to OtherBound, a series of videos talking about the rules and process of my Homestuck-inspired tabletop role-playing game, OtherBound. If you're new here, I've got a series of videos that include a rough overview of the whole game. But if you're not, or you don't really care about linear time, then we're talking about the game's universal encounter system, the Strife system. So kick back and enjoy the ride. Strife is what we call any encounter or conflict that can be broken down into a turn order, standard JRPG stuff. The obvious example is when you get into a serious fight, but this is a universal encounter system for a reason. Any situation where there's potential for disaster or it is time sensitive can become a Strife encounter, not just battle. Fending off a deadly foe, escaping from an avalanche, dealing with a volcanic eruption, convincing the king to let you leave with your life, etc, etc. See, I'm all for combat simulator games where the bulk of the mechanics are dedicated towards skirmishes and stylish battles or whatever. I'm a Lancer girly, I get it. Mekton Zeta still whispers to me in my sleep, and I've played a whole lot of D&D, I understand. But I also didn't want this game to be one of those. At least not solely. It's always bothered me when playing D&D how the only thing that seemed to be exciting in the game were the fights. Not that I haven't tried or had GMs try to make other things interesting, but with so much focus on combat, if they hadn't played other games or even other editions of D&D, everything just ended up kind of becoming roll a d20 and add some stuff and see what happens. Which is fine, but like, I don't know, if I'm watching a TV show and a fucking volcano erupts, it's kind of a big deal, right? Lots of spectacle and drama and characters using their strength and wits to try and survive. Something like that is just as exciting, if not more so, than the dramatic duels to the death. So why are the mechanics all centered towards only one of those things? The end result was that I felt the combat was the only time I was actually playing the game, which was frustrating because I didn't like the combat in D&D 5e much. If not, then the combat would be a slog, while the other stuff was way more fun if I had a GM who utilized like clocks and skill challenges and lots of narrative play stuff really well, which is lots of work for a GM to like make that entire part of the game on the fly. Note, this isn't me saying the rules light stuff is bad here either, right? Strife here also boils down to a whole lot of clocks. It just doesn't give exclusive attention to stabbing people, because I think being able to make a tornado encounter just as dramatic and engaging as a brawl is awesome. The Harmony Drive SOD already had a pretty solid encounter system for what I wanted to do, so I kept it pretty much the same with a few changes, and expanded upon it with some optional alternate rules and the way Strife encounters use this. The examples near the end of the book show you what I mean. This is where I was coming from when making Strife. When you get into an encounter that's dangerous or time sensitive, screen flashing and JRPG battle music and everything, play changes to match. The very first thing the players do is all roll for advantage. Everyone rolls adaptability as they adapt to the situation. If they have any skills that would give them a tactical advantage during Strife, they can roll with that skill. By default, this will often be stuff like tactics or strategy or whatever. The total number of successes everyone got gets added to one collective advantage pool. The advantage pool is a shared dice pool, representing how much of an edge your party has in any given situation. Keep it in mind, we'll get back to it soon. Once advantage has been rolled, your objective as players is to advance a goal, a concrete objective needed to end the encounter. While goals can be whatever the situation calls for, they can largely be slotted into three categories: destroy, redirect, or outlast. Destroy is any goal that involves smashing, breaking, or physically removing the situation via force. Redirect involves talking down, moving, or redirecting the encounter to take a different course or go elsewhere. Outlast involves surviving, enduring, or escaping from an encounter in one piece. Though it's not currently written explicitly in the book yet, anything that doesn't neatly fit into either of those three is simply a generic goal that can be approached any way you want. Strife encounters don't normally have goals that are generic, but they might have other things in the encounter that do. Strife against a dragon might have a bunch of kobold minions that are generic goals, for instance. Advancing a goal isn't as simple as just getting a single success. Each goal has a difficulty, how hard it is to advance, and you need to get that many successes with whatever rolls, spells, or abilities you use to advance them. If you're trying to kick an ogre's ass, then that's probably destroy. Let's say at a difficulty of 5. If you get 5 successes, either on the spot or spaced out through multiple rolls, then you've managed to advance that goal once. The goal of any Strife encounter is to advance a goal a number of times, usually somewhere between 3 to 5 times. Once you advance it enough times, then Strife ends and you are victorious, or at least can walk away in one piece. Typically, Strife is split into 2 phases, the player phase and the GM phase. During the player phase, every player can take 1 action each in whatever order they feel fit. Most abilities take an action to do, but beyond that, the main things they can do are attempt to advance a goal, contribute to the advantage pool, or scan the scene for motifs. Advancing a goal is just like any other play. You say how it is you're trying to tackle the goal, like by attacking the ogre with your weapon, and roll the appropriate facet and skill. Or cast a spell instead for however many successes that spell would get. Every success you get on the dice counts towards that goal. If you advance it entirely, then the difficulty resets to where it was before, and the process repeats until you're done. Contributing to the advantage pool, on the other hand, works just like how it did at the start of Strife. You're taking tactical action to give your team an advantage or edge, and you can even cast spells to do this. Each success adds a die to the advantage pool. The advantage pool's main use is to defend yourself from enemy moves, but you can also use them to add extra dice to the rolls you make, sort of taking back the dice you just put into it. Obviously, this isn't super efficient, but sometimes you need that extra oomph when you think you're not going to use those dice later. Lastly, scanning for motifs involves rolling something like sensitivity or understanding, with each success revealing an additional terrain motif in an area. Players probably won't be doing this super often in the middle of Strife, but sometimes the hidden terrain motifs in an area will be weak spots, or reveal useful information, like a perception or insight check of sorts. This isn't written in the correct section of the book yet, so don't worry too much about this for now. Once every player has taken an action, it switches over to the GM phase. On the GM phase, the GM gets to make moves. Each encounter has a set number of actions they can take per round, and that's usually slightly less than or equal to the number of players in Strife. Strife encounters usually don't have more actions than the players, as that becomes a bit of a nightmare at some point, but maybe that's what you want sometimes. If you do this, my advice would be to have some way for the players to lower the number back down to something reasonable. Unlike players, GMs don't roll dice or spend resources to use moves. They just kinda work. Each move has a number listed next to it, which shows how difficult it is to defend against. Let's say our ogre tries to use Grand Slam. That 3 there means it costs 3 dice from the advantage pool to avoid. If the players have at least 3 dice in their advantage pool, they can spend them to stop the move outright. The move is wasted and the dice are removed from the pool. So it's a good idea for players to have at least a few dice in there if they know an encounter has a particularly nasty move. Once the GM phase is finished, the round is over and a new round starts from the player phase. This is the default flow for Strife, and works fine for something as structured as a fair fight, or at least as fair as these kind of things can get. But you'll notice that it seems kinda weird sometimes. If your Strife is some wild bullshit happening, like escaping from a sinking ship, or something where you're trying to convince someone with words, then you might want to throw out the whole player and GM phase thing. Instead, either the player or GM will start first, and then the opposing side will take a turn immediately afterwards, going back and forth or in whatever order suits the flow of the scene. If you're familiar with Popcorn Initiative, then it's pretty similar to that. If one side runs out of moves or available players to take actions, then the other side keeps going in a rush until they run out of turns. When everyone has taken an action and all GM moves are spent, it's a new round for the purposes of abilities and the like. This isn't always the way to go about this, but it can be refreshing. How to succeed in Strife is pretty straightforward from there. Fill up a goal to win. But how about losing? As players, most Strife will wear away at your stamina and drive. Your stamina is effectively your health, how much physical and mental strength you have. Physical attacks, emotional damage, psychological harm, all these things wear away at your stamina. When your stamina hits 0, you are no longer able to participate in Strife. You could be knocked out, or too terrified to continue, or have talked yourself into a corner. Whatever it is, unless someone heals you, you're down and out. On top of that, you gain a scar. Scars can be literal physical scars or emotional and psychological. Traumas and fears related to whatever took you out. When you gain a scar, write down a fear or inhibition related to how you got it. I cannot face the Empress, or I can't protect anyone, or whatever. Whenever you try to do something that goes against that scar, you have setback 1. Accumulating too many scars is generally not good, but you can clear them. We'll talk about that in the episode discussing Berserk triggers. What this means is, you won't be jump scared by a random character death normally. It's not that you can't die, but losing your character is not the default assumption. There are exceptions, such as end of act bosses that actually can kill you, but generally the narrative trends towards you losing other things. Between originally writing this into the game and now, I've changed my mind slightly on how I feel about your character dying from random bullshit. I mostly think this isn't a fun experience, but I think there are games where it sort of is. Like, the stories have more impact when facing the risk of your character's demise. Maybe I'll throw in some optional rules somewhere where something death save adjacent occurs, or Armor Master's straight up death flag mechanics. I don't know. Now, if your whole party gets wiped out, then the party as a whole loses something of value. People you were trying to protect, getting captured, sacrificing your gear or taking additional scars to escape, losing reputation, and so on and so forth. And of course, a party wipe isn't the only way to lose. If Strife involved trying to defuse a bomb before a time limit, then failure involves time running out regardless of your stamina. So there should be consequences for your party getting defeated, but unless the narrative stakes make it the best choice, that usually doesn't come to a full party wipe. Everyone is dead now. That's the basics of how it works. It's supposed to be flexible for a wide array of situations. It can take a while to get the hang of it if you're not used to anything like it, so I'll probably make a short or something like that that's a small example of play, and definitely I'll include a small section like that in the book itself. Or I'll do this on hard mode and run a whole actual play instead. Actually, that could be cool. For now though, that's all we've got. We've still got magic to discuss, along with gear and items, leveling up, making your own Strife, showdowns, just lots to look forward to. I'll see you in the next one.